Let's bring in Shawn Webster, Macquarie, here to talk about what a deal this is. Drag him in here. Shawn, I'm going to ask you a question. In school, did you use a TI calculator, or an HP 12C?
I use a TI.
TI. You're not supposed to move the chair around because that gets the camera guys all screwed up. That's okay. That's okay. Yeah, and in lighting, now you're going to be in the shadow. That's okay. Were you surprised by this deal?
I was surprised by the deal, and many of the investors I talked to that were surprised by the deal.
I mean, I was blown away by the valuation. Here's the number. Let's bring it up right now. We stayed vanilla here, folks. We're going to go to pistachio in a minute. The number. Price to earnings, 2012, 19.1. That was from Glenn Young over at Citigroup, NSM. I mean, that's a big valuation, but you guys look at total enterprise value to whatever. Which metric do you use to value a semiconductor company?
Well, there's different metrics that different stocks are more sensitive to than others. The ones that tend to be most predictive of stock performance in our group are sales metrics,
right,
and book metrics.
Price to sales?
Yeah, enterprise value to sales, price to book metrics.
So I'm going to turn over here, folks, to the Bloomberg terminal. Get one for your home. NSM is a symbol for, I'm going to use the BQ function. Well, that didn't work. I'm bringing the show to a complete slowdown, standstill. They're having hysterics in the control room. Price to sales, 3.74 times price to sales. Is that a big number?
It's above what their average is. I mean, on an EV to sales basis, as far as the $25 deal price goes, it's well above their normal trading range.
Why did they do this deal?
The motivation is primarily scale and growth. So Texas Instruments has always, not always, but it's certainly in the last several years been focused on growing market share in analog and in high performance analog.
Right.
And they've bought some capacity on at pretty cheap rates during the credit crisis to help grow their capacity, which was tight last year. And so National, by pulling that in, it gives them more scale and gets them more share faster.
Isn't scale French for there's no profit to be made, so we got to get bigger to try to continue in our perfectly competitive economy?
Yeah, high-performance analog is kind of a unique bird in the semiconductor industry because market share movements tend to be glacial. So you don't see big swings in market share. TI's been gaining some share for the last several years, but it's like 2 to 3 points of share.
Critical question. I want to get your note in a minute. Critical question. We look at semiconductors, and if you look over here, I mean, you can see, folks, over here. Here's the boom in the 90s. Okay, when did you start looking at semiconductor stocks? What year, roughly?
99.
99. So you bought right here. That's where Shawn Webster bought, right? And down we go. This looks like corn or steel, some boring cereal business. Or I mean, the semiconductor business has become a boring business. Am I right?
It's I think it's a cyclical business.
Cyclical business.
Yep.
Where
the
are
stocks
we in
are
the
trading like
cyclical
traditional
right now?
cyclicals.
Where are we in the cyclical business right now?
So in terms of the inventory for cycles, so semiconductors go through these periods of overshipping and undershipping their customers just due to the complexity of their supply chain. And so we've been going through a correction, a mild one by historic standards, but a correction for the last couple quarters. And we're modeling a trough in various metrics as we get into Q1, Q2 on things that we look at like year-over-year unit growth rates or utilization rates.
Here's a note, please, Shawn. I read a bunch of notes today here. I was just floored by this valuation. Sticker price a concern, but the deal could be slightly accretive. We believe there are, I love this jargon. We believe there are some potential revenue synergies from the larger sales platform. National Semi's analog business is undergrown. I mean, they've, if I can use this phrase, they've sucked wind for 4 or 5 years. Are they taking over a dinosaur?
They're buying an existing platform of business. So where National has lost share is primarily in the handset area over the last several years. Today, a little over 40% of their business is in the industrial part of the market, which tends to be more lucrative, more sticky, and where TI's analog business has a relatively lower presence. And so from a mix perspective, that was attractive to TI. That end market, industrial, tends also to be one of the hardest ones to crack and gain share in.
I mean, again, the SOX index has gone nowhere. The industry just seems to struggle. Is it like the aluminum business where there's just oversupply, like the automobile business, which on a global basis, there's just too many cars being made? Is there too much semiconductors out there?
Well, when you're looking at this time frame that you're looking at over the last 10 plus years, there's a couple of things working against semi investors. So one was valuations. Even when you got to the end of 2003, which was that first early cycle rally we saw in semis, my group was trading at 2.5 times the S&P. And so valuations were still quite inflated back then. The other thing that you have happen is you saw margin compression for the group due to some excess capacity in the industry that was still getting worked down and higher OPEX. But now, the things that are different are we don't have the valuation on the earnings multiples working against us the same way we did back then.
Right, elegant chart too. Bring it up here, folks. You'll see it down here, Shawn. I mean, this is amazing, folks. The game theory of analog consolidation. The yellow line, this is back 5 years, is Texas Instruments holding their own, and National Semi, the white line, a train wreck of relative performance. How will the industry, or how would you suggest other executives will with all that cash out there, how will they respond to this valuation?
To the valuation, well, I think they're going to be careful. I'm sure they're considering the impact of the industry. TI was already the largest analog supplier out there. This just makes them a little bit bigger. For a number of industries in analog, the high-performance analog, like what Linear does and Maxim and some of their competitors, it tends to be a very specialized business. And so you can have small companies that develop these parts, and having scale doesn't always help. Where it does help is channels. So having diversity of product portfolios and channels into specific customers, that's where you can leverage existing channels and a breadth of product portfolio.
But just quickly on the way out here, when you look at this deal, doesn't every mediocre company have to go find value in a takeout with a 70% premium? Even if they got a 40% premium, that's a lot of performance, isn't it?
Well, National Shareholders are clearly the winner in this scenario today. It was unexpected. The price was higher than I would have thought, but it is what it is. And so, a number of other companies, smaller analog companies, would be potential targets, as they have been. But the main sticking point for acquisitions in semis and analog specifically is the sellers willing to sell at a certain price.
I totally agree. I rarely give my opinion. I 100% agree. This is about sellers, just, and buyers, that whole dysfunction that's out there with all that money out there.
And in this case, this was a deal I doubt National could pass up.
Brilliant. Shawn, never enough time. Thanks. Very smart. Shawn Webster, Macquarie. Here's